Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10, live on Channels Television Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Department of State Services uncovers alleged plots to cause breakdown of law and order in various parts of the country, including Abuja. Police declare lawyer to outlawed indigenous people of Biafra, Ifeanyi Ejiofor, wanted. President Buhari commends Nigerian army on its ongoing war against insurgency in the northeast and other security threats across the country. And panel leading impeachment inquiry against U.S. President Donald Trump says it has overwhelming evidence of misconduct and obstruction against Mr. Trump. For more information on our top stories and others, just check out our website. It's channelstv.com. YouTube.com/channelsweb has videos of all our shows. Let's talk politics now. The chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, says he will work closely with the National Assembly to determine the legal status of the smart card readers during the elections. Professor Yakubu, who announced the plans at a meeting with resident electoral commissioners at the INEC headquarters in Abuja, also promised to push for the establishment of an electoral offences commission that will prosecute those who compromise elections in the country.
It is the desire of many Nigerians to witness a free, fair and credible election where votes count and the decision of electorates are reflected in the outcome of the election. However, many of the elections conducted in the recent past, including the just concluded Kogi and Bayelsa states elections, have been trailed with serious criticisms, with some people questioning the integrity of the electoral umpire. At this meeting with the resident electoral commissioners in Abuja, the INEC chairman speaks about what the commission plans to do in order to improve the integrity of elections in Nigeria.
Where offenders are not punished, bad behavior is encouraged. The Commission will work with the National Assembly and all stakeholders for the establishment of the Electoral Offences Commission and Tribunal, recommended by the West Committee on Electoral Reform 2008, the Lemu Committee on Post-Election Violence 2011, and most recently, the Ken Namani Committee on Constitutional and Electoral Reform 2017.
He also promises to engage the National Assembly on the need to give legal protection to the smart card reader during elections.
One critical area that the Commission will engage the National Assembly is the status of the smart card reader. Let me reiterate that the smart card reader has come to stay. It cannot be jettisoned or abandoned. Rather, the Commission will seek ways by which its utility in elections can be enhanced. The status of the smart card reader must be provided for and protected by law. Similarly, accreditation data from the smart card reader should be used to determine overvoting and the margin of lead principle.
Elections remain the only legitimate means of choosing political leaders in a true democracy. But unless the result of such exercise reflects the decision of the people, it cannot be said to be truly democratic.
Now, based on INEC's call for an Electoral Offences Commission, let's go live to our studios in the nation's capital, Abuja, where we're being joined by Mr. Ezenwa Nwagu, the Chair, Partners for Electoral Reforms. A pleasure having you with us.
Thank you. Good evening.
There was an amendment to the Electoral Act before the 2019 elections. Why not dust it up and represent it for assent instead of looking for a new set of reforms?
Well, for me, really, I think that we just all need to come together and put the pressure on the executive and the legislature to give Nigerians instruments that can make for clean election. And I think President Muhammadu Buhari has responsibility and need to make a commitment to reforms. What has happened is that if you'd followed the conversation around both the amendments pre-2019 election, you will see that there was a conspiracy, in my view, between the executive and the legislature to ensure that those amendments do not come true. We have a longer period of time now. Both citizens, media, civil society organizations need to, and the politicians themselves need to come together and put that necessary pressure that can make us go through the whole hog of detailed, all-inclusive electoral reforms that will make for the kind of elections that we're looking forward to.
Mr. Nwagu, why do you think we need an Electoral Offences Commission?
It's helpful because if you look at the dynamics of the dynamics of security deployment, for instance, most elections you find out that men are moved from one location to the other. So even if they make arrests during those during the period of the election, immediately after the election they relocate to the areas where they were deployed from, and so you are not able to push the issues and the arrests that were made. So you need some specialized if you like, specialized agency that would begin to deal with. And the nature of electoral offences is becoming very, very, very wide. Not just prosecution, but you also need to begin to research into them so that you can proactively engage those issues. So it's time that we have that electoral offences tribunal. The Ways Committee recommended it, the Nnamani Committee, and a lot of Nigerians see the need that may just be the way to take out the burden. And if you also look at it, the legal department of INEC is incapacitated, is cannot deal with the mammoth of electoral offences that we're seeing in terms of prosecution. So we need to take that out of INEC, and that is part of the unbundling of INEC that is also contained in the Ways recommendation.
Now, electronic voting is another request a lot of people have been agitating for. Can we afford to go digital with our voting system now?
We really would not have a choice than to join what I call the children of light. We must take proactive steps to ensure that we go technological, and by that meaning that where it is possible to have electronic voting, we do so. But it is not a complete solution. We need also to have a conversation about the attitude of the different stakeholders to election and governance in our country. If we continue to have the transactional mindset, even if we go digital, we will improvise means of subverting what is meant to help us. Look at the smart card reader, look at the permanent voters card. They were all game changers in 2015 election, but the politicians have devised means of subverting those things. So I think, yes, it's important to remove the legal constitutional obstacles to electronic voting, but do not make the mistake of thinking that that is the end of the road. We need to work in such a way that our attitude to elections, our mindset is such that everyone is interested in having clean, acceptable, free and fair elections.
And that's a great way to end the conversation. Mr. Ezenwa Nwagu, it was a pleasure having you with us on the News at 10.
Thank you.
Now let's move over to Niger State, where the police has dispersed protesters in Tafa local government area over the cancellation of local government election results. Our correspondent, Emperor Simon, reports that policemen fired tear gas canisters and live ammunition in the process. He says the policemen at the Tafa local government secretariat shot sporadically into the air to disperse the crowd after the protesters started blocking the Kaduna-Abuja highway. Channels Television's correspondent was also beaten up and sustained injuries on his back and legs, while the cameraman, who was earlier arrested by the police, has been released. Now let's go back to our Abuja studios, where Ibrahim Adra is standing by with more stories. Hello, Ibrahim.
Hello, Melinda. Thank you for rejoining us and welcome everyone. Former Vice President of Nigeria and PDP presidential candidate in the 2019 election, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, has slammed a 2.5 billion naira libel against a presidential aide, Mrs. Loretta Onoche, over an alleged libelous publication. The former vice president was present at the registry of the FCT High Court, Maitama, where he formally deposed to his own witness statement on oath to kickstart the libel suit against Mrs. Onoche and aide of President Muhammadu Buhari. The legal action is in connection with the publication wherein Mrs. Onoche on her Twitter handle alleged that Alhaji Abubakar is on the watch list of security operatives in the United Arab Emirates, UAE, for alleged criminal matters. The PDP flag bearer had, while challenging the victory of President Buhari in the February 23 presidential poll at the Tribunal and the Supreme Court, remained in the United Arab Emirates, UAE, until last week when he returned to the country. Meanwhile, former President of the Senate, Dr. Bukola Saraki, has been reacting to the ruling by the Federal High Court in Lagos, ordering the interim forfeiture of his house in Ilorin, the Kwara State capital. In a statement, Dr. Saraki described the application to court by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, as an abuse of court process and a violation of a subsistent order of the Federal High Court, Abuja. He explains that the Federal High Court in Abuja, presided over by Justice Taiwo, had issued an order restraining the EFCC and its agents from seizing any of his assets and properties. He adds, quote, "The EFCC's claim that the Ilorin property was built by any proceed of fraud is outrightly false. The fact is that the Ilorin property was built partly by the Kwara State government pursuant to the third schedule of the governor and deputy governor at his payment of pension law 2010, and I personally funded the remaining cost of the building." He also noted that the land on which the house in question is built is not a government-allocated land. The Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Timipre Silva, says the federal government is targeting the production of 3 million barrels of oil per day as part of key priority areas of his ministry. Mr. Silva was speaking at a stakeholders meeting to assess the impact of local content operators in the nation's oil and gas industry in Yenagoa, the Bayelsa State capital, and he highlights some of the major gains from the reforms in the sector.
The eradication of smuggling of PMS across Nigerian borders, the completion of gas flare commercialization program, increase of crude oil production to 3 million barrels per day, and reduction of the cost of crude oil production by at least 5%. Other priorities include the passage of the Petroleum Industry Bill, increase of domestic refining capacity, and implementation of the amended Deep Offshore and Inland Basin Production Sharing Contract Act. The key outcomes of these priority areas will be job creation and poverty eradication, which are the cardinal aspirations of the next level agenda of President Muhammadu Buhari's government.
The Executive Secretary of the NCDMB, Simbi Wabote, on his part, expresses satisfaction with the inroads that have been made so far by indigenous players and is optimistic that greater opportunities lie ahead.
Took up equity in the 12,000 barrels per day Azikr hydro-skimming modular refinery, bringing to 2 the number of modular refineries we have gone into partnership with. The first being Walter Smith Modular Refinery in Ibigwe in Imo State. In the area of gas value chain, we have secured approval for partnership in the establishment of a 400,000 per year Type 3 LPG cylinders manufacturing plant at Polako, Bayelsa State. With these partnerships, we aim to reverse the capital flight currently associated with these products, as they are all imported. The estimated turnover from these 3 partnerships is about $360 million per annum.
It's time for our second break, but when the news at 10 returns, panel leading impeachment inquiry against the U.S. President Donald Trump says it has overwhelming evidence of misconduct and obstruction against Mr. Trump. That and other foreign stories and around the world in 5. Stay with Channels TV.